The dust swirled like a dancer's skirt across the parched main street of Promise Creek as Olivia Thornwood stepped off the stagecoach, her threadbare carpetbag clutched tightly in her trembling hands. The year was 1875, and this desolate outpost on the Arizona Territory frontier represented her last chance at a new beginning, or perhaps just her final disappointment. Behind her lay the ashes of her former life in Boston, a deceased father, mountainous debts, and the whispers that followed a woman forced to flee in disgrace. "Welcome to Promise Creek, miss," the driver called down, tossing her second bag into the dirt. "Such as it is." Olivia squinted up at the merciless sun, already feeling sweat trickling down her neck beneath the tight collar of her traveling dress. The settlement sprawled before her, a hodgepodge of wooden structures, some barely more than shacks, with a few sturdy buildings lining what passed for the town's central thoroughfare. A saloon, a general store, what appeared to be a small hotel, and at the far end, a whitewashed church whose steeple seemed to waver in the heat haze. This wasn't the teaching position in San Francisco she'd originally answered. That opportunity had evaporated with a terse telegram informing her the school had burned down. Instead, Olivia found herself responding to a desperate advertisement from Promise Creek's town council, seeking a schoolteacher for their growing population of families. The salary was meager, but it included room and board, which was all she could hope for with only $23 to her name. "You must be Miss Thornwood," came a reedy voice. A thin man with spectacles and a nervous demeanor approached, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "Maxwell Perkins, town clerk, we're mighty pleased you've arrived, beginning to think no one would answer our advertisement." "Yes, that's me. I'm grateful for the opportunity, Mr. Perkins. Let me help with your bags." The schoolhouse has living quarters attached, nothing fancy, mind you, but clean. The last teacher, well, he trailed off, then shook his head. "Never you mind about that, fresh start for everyone." As they walked, Olivia felt eyes on her from every direction, curious glances from women sweeping porches, evaluating stares from men lounging against hitching posts, the wide-eyed wonder of children darting between buildings. In a town this small, a new face, especially a young, unmarried woman's, was an event. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a simple one-room building with a small bell tower. Behind it stood a modest cabin that would serve as her home. The sight of it brought an unexpected lump to Olivia's throat. It might be humble, but it was hers at least for now. "School term starts in a week," Maxwell explained, setting down her bags inside the cabin. "We've got about 20 children of varying ages. Some barely know their letters, others quite advanced. You'll need to manage them all, I'm afraid." "I understand," Olivia said, surveying the sparse accommodations: a narrow bed, a small stove, a table with 2 chairs, and a bookshelf with a few tattered volumes. "I'll prepare appropriate lessons." "Town council meets tonight. They'll want to meet you. 7 o'clock at the town hall." Maxwell hesitated at the door. "Miss Thornwood, I should warn you, Promise Creek can be rough. We're trying to civilize it, which is why we need a proper school, but, well, just be cautious." After he left, Olivia sank onto the edge of the bed, finally allowing the tears she'd held back for weeks to fall. She had arrived with nothing but her clothes, a few books, and a teaching certificate that had cost her father's last savings. No family, no connections, no prospects beyond this dusty frontier town where she knew no one. What did she truly have to offer these people? Her moment of self-pity was interrupted by a knock at the door. Hastily wiping her eyes, she composed herself before opening it to find a young woman about her own age, perhaps 24 or 25, holding a covered basket. "Hello there. I'm Sarah Jenkins, the doctor's wife. Thought you might be hungry after your journey." She thrust the basket forward. "Fresh bread, some preserves, and a bit of cold chicken." Olivia's stomach growled in response. "That's extraordinarily kind. Please come in." Sarah swept into the cabin, immediately assessing everything with quick eyes. "We'll need to get you properly settled. This place has been empty for months." She began unpacking the basket onto the table. The whole town's buzzing about your arrival. Most of the single men are already planning to find reasons to visit the school. I'm not here to find a husband, Olivia said firmly. Sarah laughed. No one comes to Promise Creek looking for love, honey. It just has a way of finding you sometimes. She paused, studying Olivia more carefully. Running from something, Olivia stiffened. I'm merely seeking employment. Aren't we all? Sarah replied with a knowing smile. Well, whatever your story is, it's your business. But let me give you some advice. In a town this small, secrets have a way of surfacing. Better to own your truth than have it discovered. Later that evening, Olivia made her way to the town hall, a sturdy two-story building that also housed the sheriff's office. Inside, 6 men and 2 women sat around a large table, all conversation ceasing when she entered. Miss Thornwood, Maxwell said, rising to greet her. Allow me to introduce the town council. The introductions passed in a blur. The mayor, a stout man named Henderson, the general store owner, Mrs. Wilson, the banker, Mr. Rhodes, and several others whose names Olivia struggled to remember. They asked about her qualifications, her teaching philosophy, her ideas for the school. She answered confidently, drawing on her education and brief experience teaching in Boston before her father's death. And what brings you all the way out to Arizona Territory? Mayor Henderson asked, his small eyes narrowing. Seems an educated Eastern lady like yourself might find better prospects elsewhere. I believe in the importance of frontier education, Olivia replied smoothly, the practiced answer rolling off her tongue. The future of this territory, of our entire nation, depends on well-educated children, regardless of where they live. Most of the council nodded approvingly, but one man at the end of the table remained silent, his eyes fixed on her with uncomfortable intensity. Unlike the others in their somewhat formal attire, he wore a simple work shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing sun-bronzed forearms. His dark hair was slightly too long, and a few days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. "And you, sir?" Olivia asked, unable to tolerate his scrutiny any longer. "Do you have questions about my qualifications, Flynn Callahan?" he said, his voice a low rumble that somehow filled the room. "I run the Broken Spur Ranch outside town, and I'm wondering what a woman who's clearly running from something brings to our children besides her troubles." A hush fell over the room. Olivia felt blood rush to her face, but she refused to drop her gaze. "Mr. Callahan, my personal circumstances are just that personal. I assure you that my sole focus will be providing quality education to the children of Promise Creek." "Flynn," Mayor Henderson chided. "Miss Thornwood comes highly recommended." "By whom?" Flynn challenged. "Some fancy Eastern school that doesn't know the first thing about life out here. These kids need practical knowledge, not poetry and watercolors." "They need both," Olivia countered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And mathematics, history, science, all the tools they'll need to build this territory into something more than just a dusty outpost. Unless you believe the children of Promise Creek deserve less than those in New York or Boston." Flynn's eyes narrowed, but something like respect flickered in their depths. "I believe they deserve a teacher who'll stick around when things get hard. Frontier life breaks most Easterners within a month." "Then I suppose I'll have to prove my resilience, won't I?" Olivia replied coolly. After the meeting concluded with her official appointment as the town's schoolteacher, Olivia hurried back toward her cabin, the night air cooling her flushed cheeks. She heard footsteps behind her and quickened her pace. "Miss Thornwood," called Flynn Callahan's distinctive voice. "A word." She stopped, turning to face him in the moonlight. "I believe we've said all that needs saying, Mr. Callahan." He caught up to her, and she was struck by his height, at least 6 feet, towering over her 5'4" frame. Up close, she could see his eyes were a startling blue against his tanned skin. "I want to apologize for my bluntness," he said, though he didn't sound particularly sorry. "But I've seen 4 teachers come and go in 2 years. The last one left in the middle of the night without even saying goodbye to her students." I am not the last teacher, Olivia said firmly. No, you're not, he agreed. You're running from something bigger, I reckon. Makes me wonder what it is. My past is irrelevant to my ability to teach. Flynn stepped closer. In Boston, maybe. Out here, a person's character is everything. We depend on each other to survive. He studied her face in the silvery light. Those kids in there, 3 of them, are mine, not by blood but by responsibility. Their parents died of fever last winter and they've got no one else, so you'll forgive me if I'm particular about who shapes their minds. The revelation caught Olivia off guard. I didn't know. Lucy, Emma, and James Holloway, he continued. Good kids, smart, especially Lucy. She's 12 and reads better than most grown men in these parts. You've taken in orphans. Olivia reassessed the rugged rancher before her. Someone had to. He shrugged as if it were nothing remarkable. Point is, Miss Thornwood, those children have already lost too much. If you're planning to cut and run when things get difficult, and they will get difficult, then you should do it now before they get attached. Olivia lifted her chin. Mr. Callahan, I can promise you this. Whatever brought me to Promise Creek is not as important as what I intend to do here. Those children, all of them, will receive my absolute best. Judge me on that if you must judge me at all. For a long moment he just looked at her, as if trying to read the truth in her expression. Finally he nodded. Fair enough. Good night, Miss Thornwood. Good night, Mr. Callahan. As she watched him walk away, Olivia felt an unexpected fluttering in her chest. Flynn Callahan was infuriating, presumptuous, and far too perceptive for comfort. And yet, the knowledge that this hardened rancher had opened his home to orphan children revealed depths she hadn't expected. She continued toward her cabin, wondering what other surprises Promise Creek might hold. The week before school began passed in a flurry of activity. Olivia cleaned the schoolhouse from top to bottom, arranged desks, ordered supplies from the general store, and prepared lessons for students ranging from 6 to 16 years old. The town responded with surprising enthusiasm. Mothers brought curtains for the windows. Fathers repaired broken floorboards, and children appeared daily, curious about their new teacher. By Sunday, Olivia found herself in the front pew of the small church beside Sarah Jenkins, who had appointed herself Olivia's unofficial guide to Promise Creek society. The congregation was a mix of well-dressed townspeople and roughly clothed ranchers and miners. Olivia felt the weight of their scrutiny as Reverend Thomas introduced her as the new schoolteacher. Education is God's gift, the Reverend proclaimed, and we are blessed that Miss Thornwood has come to share that gift with our children. After the service, Olivia stood awkwardly in the churchyard as parents introduced their children. She was discussing reading requirements with Mrs. Peterson when she spotted Flynn Callahan approaching with 3 children. The oldest, a girl with serious eyes and honey-colored braids, walked slightly ahead while a younger girl and a small boy hung back, partially hidden behind Flynn's long legs. Miss Thornwood, Flynn said with a nod. These are the Holloways, Lucy, Emma, and James. Lucy stepped forward and extended her hand with grave formality. Pleased to meet you, madam. Will we be reading Dickens this term? I've finished Oliver Twist and started David Copperfield. Olivia couldn't help smiling as she shook the child's hand. It's lovely to meet you, Lucy. Dickens is certainly on our reading list, though we might start with some shorter works first. Yes, madam, Lucy replied, clearly disappointed. And you must be Emma, Olivia said, bending slightly to address the younger girl who appeared to be about 8. And James. The boy, no more than 6, peered up at her with enormous blue eyes before ducking behind Flynn again. They're shy, Flynn explained, his hand resting protectively on James's shoulder. Been through a lot. Of course, Olivia said softly. We'll take things slowly. The schoolroom can be a safe place, I promise you that. Flynn's expression softened slightly. They've been working on their letters at home. Lucy's been teaching them. Then Lucy must be an excellent teacher, Olivia said, causing the older girl to blush with pleasure. Perhaps she could be my assistant sometimes. Before Flynn could respond, a commotion erupted near the church steps. A man Olivia recognized as Tom Rollins, the saloon owner, was arguing loudly with another man whose fancy Eastern suit marked him as an outsider. "You cheated me, Spencer." Rollins shouted, his face flushed with anger. "Nobody cheats me in my own establishment. I assure you, sir, I played fairly," the other man replied coolly. "Your lack of skill at cards is hardly my responsibility." Flynn quickly moved the children behind him. "Lucy, take Emma and James over to Mrs. Jenkins. Stay there until I come for you." As Lucy hurried the younger children away, Flynn strode toward the arguing men. Olivia watched, transfixed, as he inserted himself between them, his voice too low to hear but his stance unmistakably authoritative. Whatever he said caused Rollins to back down, though the saloon owner continued glaring at the stranger. The confrontation dispersed, and people began drifting away, mothers hurrying children home, men gathering in small groups to discuss the incident. Olivia found herself approached by the stranger, a handsome man perhaps in his early 30s with perfectly trimmed sideburns and an expensive pocket watch chain gleaming across his vest. "Franklin Spencer," he introduced himself with a slight bow. "New to your charming town. And you must be the schoolteacher I've heard mentioned." "Olivia Thornwood," she confirmed, accepting his outstretched hand. "A pleasure, Miss Thornwood. I must say, finding a woman of obvious refinement in this wilderness is unexpected. You must feel quite out of place." Before Olivia could respond, Flynn appeared at her side. "Spencer," he said curtly. "Causing trouble already?" "Merely introducing myself to the lady," Spencer replied with a thin smile. "Though I wouldn't expect you to understand the social niceties, Callahan." Flynn's jaw tightened. "Miss Thornwood, you should know that Mr. Spencer is a professional gambler, not exactly the sort of acquaintance a schoolteacher should cultivate." "And you presume to dictate the lady's acquaintances?" Spencer asked with mock horror. "Gentlemen," Olivia interrupted firmly. "I am quite capable of choosing my own associates. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have preparations for tomorrow's classes." She walked away, her back straight, though she could feel both men watching her retreat. Franklin Spencer represented the sophisticated world she'd left behind, a world of theater performances, literary salons, and refined conversation. Flynn Callahan embodied this new frontier, rough, direct, and governed by its own harsh code of honor. She found herself oddly drawn to both, though for entirely different reasons. The next morning dawned clear and bright, and Olivia rang the school bell at precisely 8 o'clock. Children began arriving almost immediately, some on foot from town, others on horseback or in wagons from outlying ranches and farms. By 8:30, 23 students of various ages filled the schoolhouse, their faces a mixture of excitement, apprehension, and in some cases, outright defiance. "Good morning," Olivia began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I am Miss Thornwood, and I will be your teacher. We have much to learn together, but first I would like to know each of you." She went around the room, having each student stand and introduce themselves. Lucy Holloway answered with perfect diction, while Emma whispered her name so softly Olivia had to lean forward to hear it. James simply stared at his desk until Lucy nudged him, and he mumbled a barely audible response. Olivia noticed one boy, perhaps 13, watching her with unmistakable disdain. When his turn came, he stood lazily. "Daniel Wilson," he drawled. "And my pa says school's a waste of time when there's work to be done." Several children giggled nervously. "Well, Daniel," Olivia replied calmly, "your father is entitled to his opinion. However, while you are here, you will learn. What you do with that knowledge afterward is your choice." The boy scowled but sat down without further comment. The morning progressed smoothly as Olivia assessed each child's abilities, dividing them into groups based on their reading and arithmetic skills. She set the older students to help the younger ones, creating an atmosphere of cooperation rather than competition. By lunchtime, even Daniel Wilson was grudgingly participating in a spelling exercise. As the children ate their packed lunches in the schoolyard, Olivia noticed Flynn Callahan riding toward the school. He dismounted gracefully, tying his horse to the hitching post before approaching her. "Miss Thornwood," he greeted her, removing his hat. "Thought I'd check on the children. They're doing very well," she assured him. "Lucy is remarkably bright, Emma has beautiful penmanship for her age, and James, though quiet, seems to understand everything I explain." Flynn's expression softened as he watched the Holloway children sitting under a tree with their lunch pails. Their parents were good people. Edward Holloway worked for me for years, when the fever took them. He trailed off, then shook his head. "Well, those kids deserved better than an orphanage in Tucson. It was very generous of you to take them in," Olivia said softly. Flynn looked uncomfortable with the praise. Any decent man would have done the same. He turned his attention back to her. "How are you finding Promise Creek so far?" "Everyone has been very welcoming," she replied diplomatically. He snorted. "Even Franklin Spencer?" "Mr. Spencer was perfectly polite," Olivia said, feeling a need to defend the gambler, though she wasn't entirely sure why. "As was Mr. Rollins once you intervened." "Tom Rollins is a decent man with a bad temper and worse judgment when he's been drinking. Spencer is a snake who preys on men like Tom." Flynn's blue eyes fixed on her intently. "Be careful around him, Miss Thornwood. Men like that see a pretty woman alone and think she's easy prey." Olivia felt her cheeks warm at being called pretty, though she tried to ignore it. "I assure you, Mr. Callahan, I am not easily preyed upon." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "No, I don't imagine you are." He replaced his hat and glanced again at the children. "I should get back to the ranch. There's a fence line needs mending before sundown." As he mounted his horse, Olivia found herself saying, "The children are welcome to stay for supper sometime if you'd like. It must be difficult managing 3 children and a ranch alone." Flynn looked surprised by the offer. "That's kind of you." "They'd like that, I expect." He hesitated, then added, "So would I." Before Olivia could respond, he tipped his hat and rode away, leaving her wondering if she had just invited Flynn Callahan to dinner without meaning to. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm. Mornings were devoted to reading, writing, and arithmetic, while afternoons included history, geography, and natural sciences. Fridays featured art and music, with Olivia playing the small piano the town had somehow procured for the school. The children responded to her structured but gentle approach, even Daniel Wilson, who discovered an aptitude for mathematics that surprised everyone, including himself. One afternoon in late September, Olivia dismissed the children early as storm clouds gathered on the horizon. The last wagon had barely disappeared down the road when the skies opened, unleashing a torrent that transformed the dusty ground into a sea of mud within minutes. Olivia hurried toward her cabin, but the rain was so heavy she could barely see the path. Suddenly, a horse and rider appeared through the downpour. "Miss Thornwood," Flynn Callahan called, reining in beside her. "You'll drown out here." Without waiting for her response, he leaned down and extended his arm. "Come on." Olivia hesitated only briefly before grasping his forearm. With impressive strength, he pulled her up behind him on the horse. "Hold on tight," he instructed, and she had no choice but to wrap her arms around his waist as he urged the horse forward. Instead of heading toward her cabin, Flynn rode toward the main street, finally stopping under the overhang of the general store. He dismounted first, then reached up to help her down, his hands spanning her waist. For a brief moment, they stood too close, rain dripping from his hat brim onto her upturned face. "Thank you," Olivia said, stepping back and attempting to smooth her sodden skirts. "Though I'm afraid my cabin is in the opposite direction." "This storm's too dangerous," Flynn replied, tying his horse to the post. "Flash floods come up quick around here. The creek behind your cabin could overflow its banks in weather like this." As if to punctuate his point, a jagged bolt of lightning split the sky, followed almost immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. Olivia jumped despite herself. "Mrs. Wilson," Flynn called, pushing open the store door. "Got a refugee from the storm here, Mrs. Wilson, the plump, no-nonsense owner of Promise Creek's general store, emerged from behind the counter. "Gracious, Miss Thornwood, you're soaked through. Come by the stove before you catch your death." Olivia gratefully approached the pot-bellied stove in the center of the store, its warmth a blessed relief after the chilling rain. Flynn followed, removing his dripping hat. "Where are the children?" Olivia asked, suddenly realizing they weren't with him. "Safe at the ranch with my foreman and his wife," Flynn assured her. "I came to town for supplies when the storm hit, saw you trying to make it home and—" He shrugged. "Well, couldn't leave you out in that, Mrs. Wilson bustled about, producing a woolen blanket for Olivia's shoulders and a towel for Flynn. "Likely be stuck here a while," she commented, peering out at the increasingly violent storm. "Creek's already rising. Road to your place will be washed out, Flynn." "Figured as much," he replied, running the towel over his face and hair. "Reckon we're all staying in town tonight." Olivia realized with a sinking feeling that she might be stranded away from her cabin overnight. As if reading her thoughts, Mrs. Wilson patted her arm. "Don't you worry, dear. We've got a spare room upstairs. You can stay with us." "That's very kind," Olivia said gratefully. Other townspeople began appearing, seeking shelter from the deluge. The saloon across the street was doing brisk business, and even the usually sedate general store became crowded as people gathered to wait out the storm. Mrs. Wilson's husband broke out a bottle of whiskey for medicinal purposes, offering a small glass to Olivia, which she declined, and a larger one to Flynn, which he accepted with a nod of thanks. Franklin Spencer arrived looking remarkably unruffled despite the weather, his elegant overcoat somehow repelling water that soaked everyone else to the skin. He tipped his hat to Olivia. "Miss Thornwood, what a pleasant surprise. It seems Providence has arranged for us to be stranded together." Flynn made a sound suspiciously like a growl, which Spencer pointedly ignored. "I was hoping to speak with you," Spencer continued. "I understand the school is in need of new books." Olivia couldn't deny it. The school's small collection was woefully inadequate, with most volumes worn nearly to illegibility. "That's true, though the town council has approved funds for some basic texts. A pittance, I'm sure," Spencer said dismissively. "I propose to donate a proper library 50 volumes of literature, science, and history. Books that will truly expand young minds." Olivia's eyes widened. "That's extraordinarily generous, Mr. Spencer. Franklin, please," he insisted with a charming smile, "and it's nothing, really. I've had some success at the tables lately, and what better use for such winnings than education?" Flynn, who had been listening with increasing irritation, stepped closer. "And what do you want in return, Spencer? Nobody gives something for nothing in this world." Spencer's smile never faltered. "Unlike some, Callahan, I don't place a price on every good deed. I simply believe in education. Perhaps if more people in this territory had one, they'd be less inclined to solve problems with gun and fist." The implied insult hung in the air between them. Olivia intervened before Flynn could respond. "I would need to consult with the town council before accepting such a generous offer, Mr. Spencer Franklin, but I do appreciate the gesture." "Of course," Spencer agreed smoothly. "I'll draw up a list of titles for your approval. Nothing controversial, I assure you." As the evening wore on, the storm showed no signs of abating. Mrs. Wilson produced bread, cheese, and cold meat for an impromptu supper, which the stranded townspeople shared gratefully. Conversation flowed more easily with food and drink, and someone produced a deck of cards. Spencer, naturally, excelled at every game, though he graciously declined to play for money out of respect for our hostess. Olivia found herself seated between Flynn and Spencer at the large table, uncomfortably aware of the tension between the two men. Spencer entertained the group with stories of his travels New Orleans, San Francisco, even New York City, while Flynn remained mostly silent, nursing his whiskey and occasionally shooting skeptical glances at the gambler. Miss Thornwood, Spencer said during a lull in conversation, you must miss the cultural amenities of Boston. The theater, the symphony, proper libraries. Sometimes, Olivia admitted, though Promise Creek has charms of its own. Primitive charms, to be sure, Spencer replied with a laugh that several others joined. But I admire your positive outlook. Still, a woman of your refinement deserves more than this dusty outpost can offer. Flynn set down his glass with enough force to draw everyone's attention. Maybe Miss Thornwood doesn't need fancy theaters to be happy. Maybe she finds satisfaction in work that matters. And gambling doesn't matter, I suppose, Spencer countered. Not to anyone but the gambler, Flynn shot back. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Olivia cleared her throat. I believe both of you underestimate Promise Creek. This community may lack certain amenities, but it possesses something far more valuable: people who care for one another. I've seen neighbors help rebuild after fire, share food during hardship, and support each other's children. Such things aren't primitive, they're the foundation of true civilization. Her words seemed to settle over the group like a bomb. Mrs. Wilson nodded approvingly, and even Flynn's expression softened. Well said, Miss Thornwood, Spencer acknowledged with a slight bow of his head. Perhaps I have been too quick to judge. As the evening progressed, people began finding places to sleep, some in chairs, others on blankets spread on the floor. Mrs. Wilson showed Olivia to the promised spare room upstairs, a simple space with a narrow bed and a washstand. Thank you for your hospitality, Olivia said sincerely. Think nothing of it, dear, Mrs. Wilson replied. Though I should warn you, those two men downstairs both have their eye on you for very different reasons. I'm not looking for a suitor, Olivia said firmly. I came here to teach, Mrs. Wilson patted her arm. Life has a way of giving us what we need, not what we think we want. Just be careful. Spencer's charm hides many secrets, and Flynn's gruffness conceals a heart that's already been broken once. Before Olivia could ask what she meant, Mrs. Wilson wished her good night and closed the door, leaving Olivia alone with her thoughts and the steady drumming of rain on the roof. In the morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a transformed landscape. The creek had indeed overflowed its banks, cutting off access to several outlying properties, including Flynn's ranch and Olivia's cabin. The sun shone brilliantly on the soaked earth, steam rising as the temperature climbed. Road to the ranch should be passable by midday, Flynn told Olivia as they stood outside the general store, surveying the damage. I can escort you to your cabin on the way. Thank you, she replied, relieved that her impromptu adventure was nearly over. I hope the children weren't too worried. They're used to me getting stuck in town during bad weather, Flynn assured her, though something in his tone suggested he wasn't being entirely truthful. Olivia wondered how often the rugged rancher actually spent nights away from home, and why. Franklin Spencer approached, looking immaculate despite having spent the night in a storeroom. Miss Thornwood, before you depart, might I have a word about the book donation? Flynn's expression darkened, but he stepped back. I'll ready the horses. Once he was out of earshot, Spencer took Olivia's hand. I meant what I said about the books, but I'd like to discuss it further, perhaps over dinner. The hotel serves a passable meal and I would enjoy your company. Olivia gently extracted her hand. Mr. Spencer, while I appreciate your generosity toward the school, I must maintain appropriate boundaries as the town's teacher. Of course, Spencer said smoothly. I meant no impropriety. The dinner would be purely to discuss educational matters. However, I understand your position requires certain appearances. He reached into his coat and produced an envelope. A list of the books I propose to donate, along with the name of the bookseller in Tucson who can procure them. Review it at your leisure. Olivia accepted the envelope, noting its quality paper and wax seal. Thank you. I'll discuss it with the council. By noon, Flynn had procured a horse for Olivia, and they set out toward her cabin. The landscape was dramatically altered by the storm. New gullies cut across familiar paths, trees down in places, and the normally dry creek bed behind her cabin now a rushing torrent. It'll recede in a day or two, Flynn assured her as they approached. But you should stay in town if another storm comes. That cabin sits too low. I'll remember that, Olivia promised, dismounting in front of her door. To her relief, the cabin appeared undamaged, though the small garden she had started was flattened. Thank you for the escort, Mr. Callahan. Flynn remained on his horse, looking down at her with an unreadable expression. Be careful with Spencer, Miss Thornwood. Men like that don't give gifts without expecting something in return. The books would be for the school, not for me, Olivia pointed out. Maybe, Flynn conceded. Or maybe he's using the school to get close to you. Olivia felt a flash of irritation. And that would be my concern, not yours. It becomes my concern when it affects my children's education, Flynn replied, his tone hardening. Or when I see a good woman being manipulated by a professional manipulator. I assure you, Mr. Callahan, I am quite capable of recognizing manipulation. I lived in Boston society, where it's practically an art form. Something like hurt flickered across Flynn's face before he masked it. Of course, forgive me for presuming. He touched the brim of his hat. Good day, Miss Thornwood. As he rode away, Olivia felt a confusing mixture of gratitude for his concern and frustration at his presumption. Flynn Callahan was the most maddening man she had ever met, judgmental, overprotective, and far too perceptive. Yet when he looked at her with those intense blue eyes, she felt something stir within her that she had never experienced before, something both frightening and exhilarating. School resumed the following day with excited children full of storm stories. Several couldn't attend because roads remained impassable, including the Holloway children. Olivia found herself missing Lucy's serious demeanor, Emma's shy smile, and even James's solemn silence. After classes ended, Olivia was erasing the chalkboard when she heard a light knock. Turning, she found Lucy Holloway standing in the doorway. Lucy, I'm so glad to see you. Are your brother and sister with you? Lucy shook her head. They're at home with Mrs. Hendricks. Uncle Flynn sent me to bring you this. She held out a small basket covered with a checkered cloth. It's sourdough bread, he made it himself. Olivia accepted the basket, surprised and touched by the gesture. That's very kind. I didn't know Mr. Callahan baked. He doesn't usually, Lucy said with the hint of a smile. But he's been trying to learn things for us. Mrs. Hendricks says he's hopeless with needle and thread, but he can cook some things now. The image of the rough-hewn rancher carefully baking bread for orphan children made Olivia's heart twist unexpectedly. Please thank him for me, and tell him and your brother and sister that I missed you all in class today. Lucy nodded, then hesitated. Miss Thornwood. Uncle Flynn isn't really our uncle, but he's been good to us. Better than anybody since Ma and Pa died. I can see that, Olivia said gently. Some people in town talk, though, Lucy continued, her young face suddenly looking much older. They say it isn't proper him raising us alone. Especially Emma, since she's a girl, they say we should be with a proper family. Olivia knelt to Lucy's level. And what do you think? I think Uncle Flynn is the only person who wanted all three of us, Lucy said simply. Nobody else would take James because he doesn't talk much and they wanted to split us up. Uncle Flynn said we belonged together. He was right, Olivia assured her. Families should stay together. Lucy studied her face carefully. Do you like Uncle Flynn, Miss Thornwood? The directness of the question caught Olivia off guard. I respect Mr. Callahan very much. He clearly cares deeply for you and your siblings. That's not what I asked, Lucy persisted with a child's relentless clarity. Mrs. Hendricks says he needs a wife and you need a husband and you're both too stubborn to see it. Olivia felt her cheeks flush. Mrs. Hendricks should mind her own affairs, she said gently but firmly. Now you should head home before it gets dark. As Lucy departed, Olivia found herself smiling despite her embarrassment. Leave it to a 12-year-old to cut straight to the heart of matters adults spent so much energy avoiding. That evening, she tried the sourdough bread with her supper and found it surprisingly good, hearty and flavorful. She wondered how many failed attempts had preceded this successful loaf. How many times Flynn Callahan had dusted flour from his hands and started again, determined to master this small domestic skill for the children in his care. The following Sunday after church, Olivia approached Flynn, who stood somewhat apart from the congregation, watching the Holloway children play with others their age. "Mr. Callahan," she said, drawing his attention, "I wanted to thank you for the bread. It was delicious." Flynn looked momentarily embarrassed. "It was nothing. Just thought you might appreciate something homemade after the storm." "I did," she assured him, "and I've been thinking about your concerns regarding Mr. Spencer's book donation." Flynn's expression immediately darkened. "Has he been bothering you?" "Not at all," Olivia said quickly. "In fact, I've barely seen him since the storm, but I reviewed his proposed book list, and it's actually quite appropriate: classics, history texts, scientific works. Nothing objectionable." "It's not the books I'm concerned about," Flynn muttered. "I know," Olivia acknowledged, "but I've decided to accept the donation with the council's approval. The children need those books, Mr. Callahan. Lucy has read everything in our current collection twice over." Flynn's expression softened at the mention of Lucy. "She's always got her nose in a book, reminds me of." He trailed off, then shook his head. "Well, if you've made up your mind, I won't stand in your way, just be careful." "I always am," Olivia assured him. Then, gathering her courage, she added, "I was wondering if you and the children might like to come for supper this week. As I mentioned before." Flynn looked genuinely surprised by the invitation. "That's kind of you, but we wouldn't want to impose." "It's not an imposition," Olivia insisted. "I miss adult conversation sometimes, and the children would enjoy it, I think. Perhaps Wednesday." After a moment's hesitation, Flynn nodded. "Wednesday, then. Should we bring anything?" "Just yourselves," Olivia replied with a smile. "I'll take care of the rest." As she walked away, Olivia wondered what had possessed her to issue the invitation. Having Flynn Callahan in her small cabin for an evening seemed both thrilling and terrifying. She told herself it was for the children's benefit. They needed a woman's influence, but she couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach at the thought of seeing another side of the taciturn rancher. Wednesday arrived with Olivia in a state of nervous anticipation. She had cleaned her modest cabin until it gleamed, prepared a hearty stew with vegetables from her recovering garden, and even splurged on ingredients for an apple pie. At precisely 6 o'clock, she heard the sound of horses approaching. Flynn arrived with all 3 children scrubbed and dressed in their Sunday best, Lucy's hair neatly braided, Emma's tied with ribbons, and James's usually unruly curls slicked down with water. Flynn himself had clearly made an effort, wearing a clean shirt with a string tie and his hair freshly trimmed. "We brought these," Emma said shyly, presenting Olivia with a bunch of wildflowers. "They're beautiful," Olivia exclaimed, genuinely touched. "Let me find a jar for them." The evening progressed more smoothly than Olivia had dared hope. The children's presence eased any awkwardness between her and Flynn, and the simple act of sharing a meal created a warmth that filled the small cabin. Lucy spoke enthusiastically about her latest reading. Emma gradually overcame her shyness to describe a fawn she had spotted near the ranch, and even James nodded or shook his head in response to direct questions. Flynn, to Olivia's surprise, proved to be an engaging dinner companion when relaxed. He told stories of his early days in the territory that had the children giggling and Olivia hiding smiles behind her napkin. His obvious affection for the Holloways revealed itself in small ways: the gentle correction when James used his fingers instead of his fork, the proud smile when Lucy displayed her knowledge, the patient repetition when Emma spoke too softly to be heard. After dinner, while the children helped clear the table, Flynn stepped outside onto the small porch. Olivia followed, finding him gazing up at the star-filled sky. "Thank you for this evening," he said without turning. "It's been a long time since those kids had a proper family meal." "It was my pleasure," Olivia replied sincerely. "They're wonderful children. You've done a remarkable job with them." Flynn turned to look at her, his expression serious in the moonlight. I do my best, but they deserve more than I can give them alone. What they deserve is someone who loves them, Olivia said softly. And that, Mr. Callahan, you clearly do. A moment of understanding passed between them, charged with something Olivia wasn't ready to name. Flynn took a step closer. Miss Thornwood, Olivia, I'm not good with words like Spencer. I can't quote poetry or discuss philosophy, but I know what I see when I look at you. Olivia's heart began to race. And what do you see? A woman who ran from something but found her courage here. A teacher who cares more about her students than herself. Someone who made my kids smile again. His voice dropped lower. Someone I think about far more than I should. The confession hung in the air between them. Olivia found herself unable to look away from his intense gaze. Mr. Callahan, Flynn, Uncle Flynn, Lucy called from inside. James spilled his milk. The moment shattered. Flynn stepped back, his expression closing. I should help with that. As he turned to go inside, Olivia reached out impulsively and caught his hand. Perhaps you could all come again. Sunday after church, Flynn's fingers tightened briefly around hers. We'd like that. The next day at school, Olivia found it difficult to concentrate. Her thoughts kept returning to Flynn standing in the moonlight, his confession hanging between them. What might have happened if they hadn't been interrupted? More importantly, what did she want to happen? Her distraction didn't go unnoticed by her sharper students, particularly Lucy, who watched her with knowing eyes. After school, the girl lingered as others departed. Uncle Flynn was in a good mood this morning, Lucy commented casually. He was whistling while he did the chores. Was he? Olivia replied, pretending absorption in organizing papers. He only whistles when he's happy, Lucy continued. And he wasn't whistling before we went to your house for supper. Olivia couldn't help smiling at the girl's transparent matchmaking. Lucy, while I appreciate your concern for your uncle, these are matters for adults to sort out. Lucy sighed with the exaggerated patience of the young toward the obtuse elderly. Adults take forever to sort things out, and Uncle Flynn is stubborn. On that we can agree, Olivia laughed. Her amusement was cut short by the arrival of Franklin Spencer at the schoolhouse door, carrying a large wooden crate. Miss Thornwood, he greeted her cheerfully. The first shipment of books has arrived. I couldn't wait to deliver them personally. Lucy's expression immediately closed, her eyes narrowing with suspicion as Spencer set the crate on Olivia's desk. That's very kind, Mr. Spencer, Olivia said, genuinely pleased despite her complicated feelings about the man. Lucy, would you like to see the new books? Spencer finally seemed to notice the girl. Ah, you must be one of the Holloway children, Flynn Callahan's, wards. Lucy Holloway, the girl replied with cool politeness that wouldn't have been out of place in a Boston drawing room. I live with Uncle Flynn, yes. Charming, Spencer said, clearly uninterested. He turned back to Olivia. I was hoping you might join me for dinner this evening to discuss the remainder of the donation. The hotel dining room at 7. Before Olivia could respond, Lucy stepped forward. Miss Thornwood promised to help me with my composition tonight, for the territorial writing competition. Olivia blinked in surprise, having made no such promise but recovered quickly. That's right, I'm afraid I'll have to decline, Mr. Spencer. Spencer's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Another time, perhaps. He tipped his hat and departed, leaving an awkward silence behind him. There isn't really a writing competition, is there? Olivia asked once he was gone. Lucy had the grace to look slightly abashed. No, madam, but you shouldn't go to dinner with him. He's not a good man. That's a serious accusation, Lucy. What makes you say that? The girl hesitated, then said, I overheard Uncle Flynn talking with Sheriff Miller. Mr. Spencer isn't just a gambler. He's running from something back east, something bad. Olivia frowned. That doesn't necessarily make him a bad person. Many people in the territories are seeking fresh starts. Like you? Lucy asked with disconcerting directness. Yes, Olivia admitted after a moment. Like me. Lucy studied her teacher carefully. Whatever you're running from, Miss Thornwood, I don't think it's the same as what he's running from. Uncle Flynn says a person's eyes tell the truth even when their mouth doesn't. Your eyes are kind. His aren't. With that profound observation, Lucy gathered her books and departed, leaving Olivia to contemplate the wisdom that sometimes came from the most unexpected sources. The Sunday dinner with Flynn and the children became a weekly tradition over the next month. Each time, Olivia felt the walls she had built around herself lowering slightly. She learned that Flynn had come to Arizona territory after the war, that he had built the Broken Spur Ranch from nothing, and that before the Holloways, he had lived an isolated existence focused solely on his work. For his part, Flynn seemed genuinely interested in her teaching methods, her ideas for the school's future, and occasionally, tentatively, in her past. Olivia shared carefully edited stories of her life in Boston, her father's work as a professor, her own education. She avoided any mention of the scandal that had driven her west, though she sometimes caught Flynn watching her with a look that suggested he knew she was holding something back. Meanwhile, Franklin Spencer had become a fixture in Promise Creek. He had taken a suite at the hotel, claiming to find the town's rustic charm appealing after years of city life. His book donations to the school continued, earning him the approval of most parents, though Flynn remained openly skeptical of his motives. One crisp October afternoon, Olivia was preparing to lock the schoolhouse when Spencer appeared at the door. "Miss Thornwood, I've been hoping to catch you alone," he said, his usual smooth confidence tinged with what appeared to be genuine nervousness. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you." "Of course," Olivia replied, though a sense of unease crept over her. Spencer stepped closer. "I'll be direct. I find you enchanting, Olivia. Your intelligence, your dedication to these children, your quiet beauty, they've captured my attention completely." "Mr. Spencer," Olivia began, but he held up a hand. "Please hear me out. I know you've been spending time with Callahan and those orphans he's taken in. It's admirable, truly, that you're helping them, but I can offer you so much more." He took her hand. "I have investments in San Francisco, connections in New York. We could leave this dusty outpost behind. You deserve theaters, libraries, proper society, all the things you left behind in Boston." Olivia gently but firmly withdrew her hand. "While I'm flattered by your interest, Mr. Spencer, I'm not looking to leave Promise Creek. My work here is important to me." "Think about it," Spencer urged. "Teaching a handful of frontier children versus the life we could have together. Museums, concerts, travel, all the things a woman of your background must miss desperately." "There was a time when I might have valued those things above all else," Olivia admitted, "but I've found something here that I never had in Boston." "And what might that be?" Spencer asked, his tone cooling slightly. "Purpose," Olivia said simply. "A sense that what I do matters, that I matter not for my family name or social connections, but for myself." Spencer's expression hardened. "It's Callahan, isn't it? You've developed feelings for that rough-hewn rancher." "My feelings are my own concern," Olivia replied with quiet dignity. "But I would appreciate it if you would respect my decision." Spencer stepped back, his charm falling away to reveal something colder beneath. "Of course. Though I wonder what your precious students and their parents would think if they knew the real reason you fled Boston in such haste." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. "What do you mean?" "I have connections in many cities, Olivia, including Boston." Spencer's smile was no longer pleasant. The daughter of Professor Charles Thornwood, forced to flee after her father's disgrace and suicide, debts, embezzlement from the university, rumors of gambling, it caused quite the scandal, I understand. "How dare you?" Olivia whispered, hands trembling. "My father was a good man who made mistakes. He paid for them with his life." "And you've been paying ever since, haven't you?" Spencer pressed. "Running from town to town, always looking over your shoulder, afraid someone will discover your shame." "Get out," Olivia said, her voice finding strength in anger. "Get out now." Spencer picked up his hat. "I'll go. But consider my offer carefully, Olivia. A fresh start far from here with a man who knows your secrets and accepts them." or stay and wait for the good people of Promise Creek to learn the truth about their beloved teacher? He paused at the door. I'll call on you tomorrow for your answer. After he left, Olivia sank into her chair, trembling. Her carefully constructed life in Promise Creek suddenly felt as fragile as a house of cards. If Spencer revealed her father's disgrace, the town council might well dismiss her. More than that, the thought of Flynn learning about her past from someone else, seeing the disappointment in his eyes, was unbearable. That evening she paced her small cabin, weighing her options. She could leave, as she had before, find another small town desperate for a teacher. But the thought of abandoning her students, the school she had worked so hard to improve, and she finally admitted to herself Flynn and the children, left an ache in her chest she couldn't ignore. Or she could accept Spencer's offer, distasteful as it was. A loveless arrangement with a man who would use her secrets to control her. The thought made her physically ill. There was a third option, the most frightening of all. She could stay and tell the truth herself, face whatever consequences came, and hope that the connections she had built would be strong enough to withstand the revelation. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. Opening it, she found Flynn standing on her porch, his expression serious. "I need to talk to you," he said without preamble. Olivia stepped back to let him enter, her heart pounding. Had Spencer already spread his poison? Flynn paced the small room, clearly agitated. "Lucy told me Spencer was at the school today, that he was holding your hand." Of all the things Olivia had expected, jealousy wasn't among them. "Lucy has a vivid imagination," she said carefully. "Mr. Spencer did visit the school, but I don't trust him," Flynn interrupted. "There's something not right about that man. Sheriff Miller's been asking questions about him, and the answers coming back aren't good." "What kind of answers?" Olivia asked, her earlier unease returning. Flynn stopped pacing to look at her directly. "Spencer's wanted in Denver for swindling a widow out of her inheritance, in Santa Fe for running a crooked gambling operation, and there are rumors about a man matching his description being involved in a murder in St. Louis." Olivia sank into a chair. "Are you certain?" "Miller got a telegram today confirming at least the Denver charge," Flynn said, his voice gentling as he saw her distress. "Olivia, has he threatened you?" The use of her given name, rare enough to still send a small thrill through her, gave Olivia courage. "Not exactly threatened, but he knows things about my past, things I've tried to leave behind." Flynn knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. "Whatever it is, you can tell me. Nothing could change he stopped, seemingly unable to find the words. "Just tell me," he finally said. Olivia took a deep breath. "My father was a professor at Harvard, respected, brilliant, but with one terrible weakness: gambling. He lost everything, our home, his savings, even funds entrusted to him by the university. When it was discovered, he couldn't face the disgrace." Her voice broke. "He took his own life." Flynn's hands tightened on hers. "I'm sorry." "The scandal was enormous," Olivia continued, the words pouring out now that she had begun. "Everyone in Boston society knew. I couldn't walk down the street without whispers following me. There was nothing left, no money, no family name worth having. I took what little I could salvage and headed west, determined to start over." "And Spencer threatened to reveal this?" Olivia nodded. "He asked me to leave with him. When I refused, he implied he would tell everyone about my father's disgrace. He's returning tomorrow for my answer." Flynn's expression darkened with anger. "He won't be returning anywhere except a jail cell. Miller's deputizing men tonight to arrest him." "No," Olivia said urgently. "If there's a public arrest, everyone will know why. The questions will start, and eventually the truth will come out anyway." "Then what do you want to do?" Flynn asked. Olivia squared her shoulders. "I'm going to tell the town council myself. Tomorrow morning before school. Whatever happens after that, at least I'll have been honest." Flynn studied her face, his blue eyes filled with an emotion she dared not name. "You're the bravest person I've ever known, Olivia Thornwood." "I don't feel brave," she admitted. "I feel terrified, being scared and doing it anyway. That's what courage is." Flynn stood, pulling her gently to her feet. "You don't have to face this alone. I'll be there with you tomorrow." They stood close enough that Olivia could feel the warmth radiating from him, could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes. Without conscious thought, she raised a hand to his cheek, the stubble rough against her palm. "Flynn," she whispered, not sure what she meant to say. He covered her hand with his own, turning his face slightly to press a kiss to her palm. The gentle gesture undid her completely. Tears she had held back for too long spilled down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she said, trying to turn away, embarrassed by her weakness. "Don't be," Flynn murmured, drawing her closer. His arms encircled her, strong and steady, offering comfort without demand. Olivia let herself lean into his embrace, her head finding the perfect resting place against his shoulder. They stood that way for several minutes until Olivia's tears subsided and her breathing steadied. When she finally drew back slightly, Flynn kept his arms loosely around her waist, as if unwilling to let her go completely. "Better?" he asked softly. Olivia nodded, suddenly acutely aware of their proximity, of his hands spanning her waist, of the way his eyes darkened as they searched her face. "Olivia," he began, his voice rough with emotion, "I'm not good at pretty words. But I need you to know whatever happens tomorrow, however the town reacts, it changes nothing for me. Nothing about how a gunshot shattered the night, startlingly close." Flynn instinctively pulled Olivia against him, shielding her with his body as he looked toward the window. "Stay here," he ordered, reaching for the door. "No," Olivia caught his arm. "If that's Spencer, all the more reason for you to stay inside," Flynn insisted. "Lock the door behind me." Before she could protest further, he was gone. Olivia moved to the window, peering anxiously into the darkness. In the distance, she could see lanterns being lit in town, people emerging from buildings to investigate the disturbance. Then came more gunshots, a woman's scream, and the distinctive sound of horses at full gallop. Unable to bear the uncertainty, Olivia grabbed her shawl and hurried outside, ignoring Flynn's instruction to stay put. She had barely reached the main street when she saw Flynn running toward her, his expression grim. "What happened?" she asked. "Spencer tried to rob the bank," Flynn said, breathing hard. "Miller caught him in the act. There was a shootout. Spencer's wounded, but he got away. Miller's organizing a posse." "The bank?" Olivia repeated, confused. Why would he risk that when he could have simply left town? "Miller thinks he's been planning it for weeks. The book donations, the friendly act, it was all to gain people's trust while he studied the bank's security." Flynn's face darkened. "And I reckon his interest in you was part of the same scheme." The respectable schoolteacher on his arm would have given him even more credibility. The realization that she had been nothing but a pawn in Spencer's game should have hurt, but Olivia felt only relief. "Will Sheriff Miller need you for the posse?" Flynn nodded reluctantly. "He's asked every able man to help. Spencer's dangerous and he knows the territory between here and Tucson." "Then you should go," Olivia said, though fear clutched at her heart. "Be careful, Flynn, please." His expression softened. "I will." He hesitated, then quickly bent and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "We'll finish our conversation when I return." As she watched him stride toward the gathering posse, Olivia hugged her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The night had brought revelations and dangers she couldn't have anticipated, but also a fragile hope that perhaps, just perhaps, Flynn Callahan cared for her as deeply as she had come to care for him. The town was in an uproar the next morning. School was canceled as parents kept their children home, fearing Spencer might return. The posse had tracked him through the night but lost his trail near the river, where the rocky terrain made following horseshoes impossible. Olivia spent the day in anxious waiting, alternating between worry for Flynn's safety and concern about her own uncertain future. By evening, with no word from the posse, she found herself unable to remain alone with her thoughts any longer. She walked to the church, finding it empty and peaceful in the gathering dusk. Sliding into a pew, Olivia closed her eyes. She wasn't particularly religious, but the quiet sanctuary offered a respite from the turmoil of her mind. She had nearly decided to return home when she heard the church door open behind her. "Miss Thornwood," Lucy's voice echoed slightly in the empty space. "We've been looking for you." Olivia turned to find all three Holloway children in the doorway. "Lucy, Emma, James, what are you doing in town?" "Is Flynn back?" Lucy shook her head, leading her siblings into the church. "No, Mrs. Hendricks brought us to town for supplies. She's at the general store." "We were worried about you," Emma added quietly, sliding into the pew beside Olivia. "Because of the bad man." Olivia put her arm around the little girl. "That's very sweet, but I'm fine. Mr. Spencer is far away by now." "No, he isn't," Lucy said, her young face unusually solemn. "We saw him." Olivia felt her blood run cold. "What? Where?" "At the old Willard place," Lucy explained, referring to an abandoned homestead a mile outside town. "We were gathering blackberries by the creek and James wandered off. When we found him, he was hiding in the bushes watching the cabin. Mr. Spencer was there putting something under the floorboards. His horse was hurt," Emma added. "It was limping." Olivia's mind raced. If Spencer's horse was injured, he couldn't have gone far. He must have circled back, hoping to hide until the search moved farther south. "Did you tell anyone else?" she asked urgently. "We tried to tell Mrs. Hendricks, but she was busy with the store owner," Lucy said, "and Sheriff Miller is gone with the posse." Olivia made a quick decision. "We need to tell Deputy Wilson right away. He stayed behind to watch the town." As they hurried toward the sheriff's office, Olivia kept the children close, scanning the streets warily. The deputy was dozing in his chair when they burst in, but he came alert quickly at Olivia's news. "The Willard place, you say?" he confirmed, reaching for his gun belt. "How long ago did you see him, kids?" "About an hour," Lucy estimated. "He could still be there, especially with a lame horse," the deputy mused. He looked at Olivia. "Miss Thornwood, take the children to the hotel and stay there. I'll round up whatever men are still in town and check it out." "Should we send a rider after the posse?" Olivia suggested. "Already did when we got word Spencer's trail went cold," Wilson replied. "They should be heading back by now. Just sit tight and keep these young ones safe." At the hotel, Olivia secured a room and settled the children as comfortably as possible. James fell asleep almost immediately, curled on the bed like a small animal. Emma soon followed, her head pillowed on her brother's shoulder. Lucy, however, remained wide awake, her sharp eyes fixed on Olivia. "Are you scared?" the girl asked. "A little," Olivia admitted, seeing no point in lying to this perceptive child. "But Deputy Wilson and the others will handle it." "Uncle Flynn will be mad we went berry picking alone," Lucy said, a hint of worry creeping into her voice. "He told us to stay near the house. He'll be relieved you're safe," Olivia assured her. "That's what matters most." Lucy was quiet for a moment, then said, "I think he loves you." The simple statement, delivered with a child's directness, caught Olivia off guard. "Why do you say that?" "He smiles different when he talks about you, and he cleaned the house real good before you came to dinner the first time. He never does that for anyone else." Lucy looked down at her hands. "Our ma used to say a man shows love by what he does, not what he says." "Your mother sounds like she was very wise," Olivia said softly. "She was," Lucy agreed. Then, with the abrupt subject changes typical of children, she asked, "If you married Uncle Flynn, would you be our ma?" The question pierced Olivia's heart. "Lucy," that's a commotion outside interrupted her response. Crossing to the window, Olivia peered cautiously around the curtain. Men on horseback were arriving in the street below the returning posse. Her heart leapt when she spotted Flynn among them, dusty and tired-looking but apparently unharmed. "Stay here with your brother and sister," she instructed Lucy. "Lock the door behind me. I'm going to tell them what you saw." Olivia hurried downstairs and out into the street, which was now filled with tired men dismounting from equally tired horses. Sheriff Miller was conferring with Deputy Wilson, while others were heading toward the saloon, clearly in need of refreshment after their long ride. "Flynn," Olivia called, making her way through the crowd. He turned at the sound of her voice, his weary expression transforming into one of concern as he strode toward her. "Olivia, what's wrong?" "The children," she began, then seeing his alarm, quickly added, "They're safe upstairs in the hotel." But they saw Spencer today at the old Willard homestead. Deputy Wilson took some men to investigate. Flynn's hand went automatically to his gun. "How long ago?" "They left about an hour ago," Olivia said. "The children are worried they'll be in trouble for wandering off." A ghost of a smile touched Flynn's lips. "They will be, but not until I'm sure they're safe." He turned to call to the sheriff, who immediately joined them. As Flynn related what Olivia had told him, more riders appeared from the direction of the Willard Place Deputy Wilson and his hastily assembled group. The deputy's expression told the story before he spoke. "He was there all right," Wilson reported. "Found blood on the floor and fresh horse droppings out back, but he'd cleared out. Must have heard us coming, or seen the posse returning," Sheriff Miller suggested grimly. "Wounded on a lame horse, he can't have gone far. We'll rest the horses for an hour, then head out again." Flynn shook his head. "It'll be full dark soon. We'd be wasting time searching blind. Better to start fresh at first light." The sheriff considered this, then nodded reluctantly. "You're right. Post guards at all roads out of town. If he's still in the area, we'll find him tomorrow." As the men dispersed to see to their horses and get some food, Flynn turned back to Olivia. "Where are the kids exactly?" "Room 4 upstairs," she said. "Lucy's keeping watch over Emma and James." Flynn's expression softened. "You've been looking after them?" "Of course," Olivia replied. They were frightened. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the simple gesture sending warmth through her entire body. "Thank you," he said softly. "Flynn," she began, suddenly needing to finish the conversation that had been interrupted the previous night. "About what you were saying before, not here," he interrupted gently. "Too many eyes and ears. Let me see to the children first, then we'll talk, properly?" Olivia nodded, understanding his desire for privacy. "I'll wait." Flynn's reunion with the Holloway children was touching to witness. James, usually so reserved, flung himself into Flynn's arms the moment he entered the hotel room. Emma wrapped herself around his leg, while Lucy tried to maintain her dignity for all of 5 seconds before joining the embrace. Flynn gathered all three close, his big hands gentle as he checked them for any sign of harm. "You three are in a heap of trouble for wandering off," he said, though his tone held more relief than anger. "But we'll discuss that tomorrow. Tonight you're coming home with me." "Can Miss Thornwood come too?" Emma asked hopefully. "She told us stories while we waited." Flynn glanced at Olivia, who had been hanging back near the door. "That's up to Miss Thornwood." 3 pairs of hopeful eyes turned to her. "Please," Lucy added. "It's not safe for you to stay alone with that bad man still out there." The thought of returning to her isolated cabin suddenly seemed less appealing than it had that morning. "If it's not an imposition," Olivia said carefully. "It's not," Flynn assured her. "The ranch house is secure, and there's plenty of room." And so Olivia found herself riding beside Flynn toward the Broken Spur Ranch as dusk deepened into night, James seated before him on his horse, while the girls rode double on a gentle mare. The journey was made mostly in silence, all of them watchful and alert to any sign of danger. The ranch house was larger than Olivia had expected, a sprawling single-story structure built of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapping around 2 sides. A lamp burned in the window, and as they approached, the door opened to reveal a gray-haired woman with a shotgun. "Put that down, Mrs. Hendricks," Flynn called. "It's just us." "Thank the Lord," the woman exclaimed, lowering the weapon. "When you didn't return with the children, I feared the worst." "We're all fine," Flynn assured her, helping James down from the horse. "Miss Thornwood will be staying with us tonight." Mrs. Hendricks, who Olivia recognized as the foreman's wife, nodded approvingly. "I'll make up the spare room. There's stew keeping warm on the stove." After the children were fed, washed, and tucked into bed with another round of stories, Olivia found herself alone with Flynn in the ranch house's comfortable main room. "Mrs. Hendricks had discreetly retired to the small cabin she shared with her husband nearby, leaving them in privacy. "Your home is lovely," Olivia said, running her hand along the polished surface of a bookshelf filled with well-worn volumes. "I didn't expect so many books." "My mother's influence," Flynn explained. "She taught me to read before I started school, made sure I always had something new to challenge my mind." A shadow crossed his face. "She died when I was 14, consumption." "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly. Flynn shrugged. "It was a long time ago." "But I kept reading. Habit, I suppose." He gestured to a chair near the fireplace. "Please sit. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Something stronger?" "Coffee would be nice," Olivia replied, settling into the comfortable chair. As Flynn busied himself at the stove, she took the opportunity to study him more closely. Without his hat, his dark hair fell across his forehead in a way that made him look younger, less severe. The lines of his face were softened by the warm lamplight, though the shadow of stubble along his jaw remained distinctly masculine. He brought her a steaming cup, then took the chair opposite hers. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, the crackle of the fire the only sound. "You were about to tell me something last night," Flynn finally said. Before we were interrupted, Olivia cradled her cup, gathering her courage. "Yes, I wanted to thank you for not judging me for my father's mistakes, for being willing to stand by me when I told the council." "I wouldn't judge anyone for their family's past," Flynn said quietly. "We all have ghosts following us. Even you?" Olivia asked. Flynn's gaze dropped to the fire. "Even me." He was silent for so long that Olivia thought he might not continue, but finally he spoke. "I was married once. Her name was Rebecca. She came west with me after the war, full of dreams about building a life together." Olivia felt a strange tightness in her chest. "What happened?" Frontier life was harder than she expected. The isolation, the hardships, the constant struggle just to survive it wore her down. Flynn's voice was flat, as if he were reciting facts rather than reliving personal pain. "After 3 years, she told me she couldn't stand it anymore. She left on the stagecoach the next day. I later heard she'd returned to St. Louis, remarried, someone who could give her the life she wanted." "I'm sorry," Olivia said, understanding now the source of his initial suspicion toward her. "That must have been devastating." "It was," Flynn acknowledged. "For a long time after, I convinced myself I was better off alone, that I didn't need anyone." He looked up, meeting her eyes directly. "Then you arrived in Promise Creek." The intensity of his gaze made Olivia's heart race. "Flynn, let me finish," he said gently. "When you first came to town, I saw another Eastern woman who'd run away from something, who'd eventually run away from here too. I was determined not to let the children get attached, not to get attached myself. And now," Olivia whispered. Flynn set aside his coffee cup and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Now I know better. You're nothing like Rebecca. You've faced every challenge here with courage and determination. You've made a place for yourself. You've made a difference." His voice softened. "You've made me believe in second chances." Olivia found herself moving to the edge of her seat, drawn by the raw honesty in his words. "I came to Promise Creek because I had nowhere else to go," she admitted. "I had nothing to offer but my teaching skills and my willingness to work hard. I never expected to find this, Flynn prompted, "a place that feels like home, children who matter to me, a man who makes me feel." She hesitated, searching for the right words. "Like I'm enough, just as I am." Flynn reached across the space between them, taking her hand in his. "You're more than enough, Olivia. You're everything I never knew I wanted." The simple declaration, spoken in his deep, sincere voice, broke something open inside her. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were tears of relief, of joy, of a burden finally set down. "Flynn," she began, but whatever she meant to say was lost as he rose from his chair, drawing her up with him. Standing before her, he cupped her face gently in his calloused hands. "I'm not a wealthy man," he said softly. "I can't offer you theaters or fancy parties or the life you had in Boston." All I have is this ranch, those 3 children who already adore you, and my heart which has been yours since the day you stood up to me in the town council meeting." Olivia laughed through her tears. "You were insufferable that day." "I was terrified," Flynn admitted with a rueful smile. "Terrified that you'd change everything, and you have." His thumbs gently wiped away her tears. "Olivia Thornwood, I love you. I want you to stay in Promise Creek not just as our teacher, but as my wife, as a mother to Lucy, Emma, and James, as my partner in everything." The words Olivia had scarcely allowed herself to hope for hung in the air between them. She covered his hands with her own, her heart so full she could barely speak. "I love you too," she whispered, "and yes, yes to all of it." Flynn's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he lowered his head until his lips met hers in a kiss so tender it brought fresh tears to her eyes. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer, and Olivia wound her arms around his neck, letting herself be held, be cherished, be loved. When they finally separated, both breathless, Flynn rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the night of the storm," he confessed. "Why didn't you?" Olivia asked, her fingers playing with the hair at the nape of his neck. "Wasn't sure you wouldn't slap me," he said with a low chuckle. "You were still calling me Mr. Callahan in that prim schoolteacher voice." "I'll have you know that's my authoritative tone," Olivia protested, laughing. "It works wonders on unruly students and unruly ranchers." Flynn asked, his eyes twinkling. "Especially those," Olivia confirmed, rising on tiptoes to kiss him again. They might have continued in this pleasant fashion for some time had a small voice not interrupted them. "Does this mean you're going to be our ma now?" They turned to find James standing in the hallway doorway, his hair tousled from sleep, his eyes wide and hopeful. It was the first complete sentence Olivia had ever heard him speak. Flynn crossed to the boy and knelt before him. "Would you like that, James, if Miss Thornwood became your ma?" James nodded solemnly. "Lucy said she would if you kissed her, and you did." Flynn glanced back at Olivia, his expression a mixture of amusement and tenderness. "Lucy's a smart girl," he said, ruffling James's hair, "but it's more complicated than just a kiss. Miss Thornwood and I would need to get married first." "Tomorrow?" James asked hopefully. Olivia joined them, kneeling beside Flynn. "Not quite that soon," she explained gently. "But yes, if I marry your Uncle Flynn, I would be honored to be your mother, James, and Emma's and Lucy's too." James considered this seriously, then launched himself into her arms with surprising force. "Good," he said simply over the boy's head. Olivia met Flynn's gaze, seeing in his eyes the same joy and wonder she felt in her own heart. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Spencer still at large, the town's reaction to her father's scandal, the inevitable adjustments of blending their lives, they would face them together. "Come on, little man," Flynn said, standing and lifting James into his arms. "Back to bed. We can talk more about this in the morning." As Flynn carried James back to his room, Olivia remained kneeling on the floor, overwhelmed by the swift turn her life had taken. When she had arrived in Promise Creek just months ago, she had been alone, ashamed, with nothing to offer but her teaching skills. Now she had found not only a community that valued her, but a man who loved her and children who needed her. Flynn returned, extending his hand to help her up. "He's already asleep again," he reported, "though I suspect we'll face an inquisition from all 3 of them at breakfast." "I look forward to it," Olivia said truthfully. Flynn drew her into his arms again. "I meant what I said, Olivia. I don't have much to offer in material terms." Olivia placed her finger against his lips. "Stop. You're offering me everything I've ever truly wanted: a home, a family, love. Those are worth more than all the theaters and libraries in Boston." "I have something for you," Flynn said suddenly, stepping back. He crossed to a desk in the corner and opened a drawer, returning with a small wooden box. "I've been carrying this for weeks, waiting for the right moment." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band set with a small pearl. "It was my mother's," he explained. "Nothing fancy, but it's perfect." Olivia interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. Absolutely perfect. Flynn took the ring from its box and, taking her left hand, slipped it onto her finger. It fit as if it had been made for her. We'll tell the children in the morning, he said, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. And the town whenever you're ready, after Spencer is caught, after the dust settles. I don't want to wait, Olivia decided. Whatever comes with Spencer, whatever people say about my father, I want to face it as your fiancé, not alone. Flynn's smile warmed her to her toes. Then that's what we'll do. The next morning brought sunshine, excited children, who, as it turned out, had all been awake for James's midnight discovery. And news that Spencer had been captured trying to steal a fresh horse from a farm 5 miles outside town. The stolen bank money was recovered from beneath the floorboards of the Willard place, exactly where the children had seen him hiding it. 2 weeks later, with Spencer safely in custody awaiting transport to the territorial prison, Olivia stood before the town council and told them the complete truth about her father's disgrace and suicide. To her amazement and relief, their response was not condemnation but compassion. My dear Miss Thornwood, Mayor Henderson said when she had finished, each of us came to this territory seeking a fresh start for one reason or another. Your teaching has transformed our school and our children. As far as this council is concerned, your father's mistakes are his own, not yours. Beside her, Flynn squeezed her hand supportively. When she had finished speaking with the council, he cleared his throat. While we're making announcements, he said, Miss Thornwood has done me the honor of agreeing to become my wife. The expressions of delight and congratulations that followed were overwhelming. Mrs. Wilson hugged Olivia tightly, whispering, I knew it from the first time I saw you two arguing. Nobody fights like that unless there are feelings involved. Reverend Thomas offered to perform the ceremony whenever they wished, and Sarah Jenkins immediately began planning a wedding celebration worthy of Promise Creek's finest teacher and most stubborn rancher. 6 weeks later, on a crisp December afternoon, Olivia Thornwood became Olivia Callahan in the small whitewashed church where she had first met the Holloway children. Lucy stood beside her as maid of honor, wearing a new blue dress that matched her eyes, while Emma scattered wildflowers preserved from the fall bloom. James, solemn in a new suit, carried the rings on a small cushion Sarah had sewn for the occasion. But it was Flynn who captured Olivia's attention completely. Standing at the altar in a new black suit, his hair neatly trimmed, his face freshly shaved, he looked both unfamiliar and utterly right. When she reached him, he took her hands in his eyes never leaving her face as they spoke their vows. I take you, Olivia, to be my wife, he said, his deep voice steady and sure. To share all that I am and all that I have for all the days of our lives. I take you, Flynn, to be my husband, she replied, her heart in every word, to build a life and a family together wherever the journey leads us. The celebration afterward filled the town hall to bursting. Every resident of Promise Creek seemed determined to wish them well, to offer advice both practical and outlandish, to remind them how unlikely their match had seemed just months before. Never thought I'd see the day Callahan would smile so much, Sheriff Miller commented to anyone who would listen. That woman's performed a miracle. As the evening wore on, Flynn found Olivia standing by the window, watching the children playing with others their age in the last light of day. Having second thoughts, Mrs. Callahan? He asked, coming to stand beside her. The name still sent a thrill through her. Not one, she assured him, leaning into his side as his arm wrapped around her waist. I was just thinking about how much has changed since I stepped off that stagecoach. For the better, I hope, Flynn said, pressing a kiss to her temple. Beyond anything I could have imagined, Olivia confirmed. When I arrived, I thought I had nothing to offer this town except my teaching. I was so afraid of being discovered, of being judged for my past. And now. Olivia turned to face him, rising on tiptoes to brush a kiss across his lips. Now I know that what I have to offer is enough, that I am enough, because you showed me how to see myself through your eyes." Flynn's arms tightened around her. "I meant what I said that night," he murmured against her hair. "You're everything I want, Olivia, everything I need. And you," she whispered back, "are everything I never knew to hope for." As dusk settled over Promise Creek, transforming the dusty frontier town into a landscape of purple shadows and golden lamplight, Olivia Callahan looked at the man she had married, at the children who were now hers in every way that mattered, at the community that had embraced her despite her fears, and knew with absolute certainty that she had found her home. The young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a carpetbag and a teaching certificate had found everything she needed in this unlikely place: purpose, family, and a love that had seen beyond her broken past to the strength within. It wasn't the life she had been raised to expect, but it was infinitely more precious for having been so unexpectedly discovered. In the years that followed, the Callahan family became a cornerstone of Promise Creek. The school flourished under Olivia's continued guidance, eventually expanding to a 2-room building with a proper library. Flynn's ranch prospered, allowing them to build additions to the house, as their family grew to include 2 more children, a boy with Flynn's blue eyes and a girl with Olivia's auburn hair. Lucy eventually followed in her adoptive mother's footsteps, becoming a teacher herself after attending college in Denver. Emma discovered a talent for healing and apprenticed with Dr. Jenkins, while James, once so silent, found his voice as a writer whose stories of frontier life would one day be published back east. And on quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the work of the day was done, Flynn and Olivia would sit together on their porch, watching the sun set over the land they both loved, their hands intertwined, still marveling at the journey that had brought them together, a journey that began when a woman with nothing to offer met a cowboy who saw everything she could be.